Streaming is on.
The question here is like, where does the methodology fit in? There's lots of possibilities here. There's like the evaluation session, there's management, there's activity team. I don't know, you could think of it being part of the core team. You could think of it being part of like even the board or the executives, The question is like, where does it fit in? How does it fit in? Is it just the organizational level, And my whole context here is that I'm not sure if it fits in anywhere, which I think might be the problem with why it's not actually getting addressed and moving forward.
Right. So if we go back
in the introduction here is simply that every single other component, whether it's evaluating our issues, addressing our issues, our contention, fixing our policies, dealing with our management, our activity team, our income situations, like all of that is all for us. Like the entire organizational framework is for us. The methodology is the only thing where we get into what are we leaving behind? What are we actually setting up for the future generations and providing for them? And so that's another component to consider. Yes, our policies are like, documents that people can review. But for example, if a new organization created their organization, their own policies, they're going to create their own policies, whereas they don't necessarily need to create their own methodology. Okay?
Yeah, exactly. So I wanted to ask you before. So I would like to have some clarity on. All right, let me go. So we have the methodology, and then we have the model, right? So the model our model is based on three main columns, right? Which is the economic component, economic, educational,
mission,
and governance, right?
Yeah, that's our mission. That's also part of like Sensei, yeah.
Yeah. So what I'm saying is that the model is how do you create the model? The model is the boundaries of the model are set by the policies, right?
No, not at all. Mm-hmm. The policies have nothing to do with the methodology. That's the whole thing.
No,
is that
the model? I'm saying
the model of what?
I would like to know the difference between the methodology and the model. So I understand that the model is. I understand the model. The model is based on three main components. So we have the economic component, which is the work, the educational component, which is the policies,
so
and the way that we do the work, and the government's how we take decisions. But so what is the difference?
No, so methodology is way beyond all of this. So the definition of methodology would be the experiential understanding of our guiding documents.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? That would be the methodology, is the experiential understanding of our guiding documents. So anything and everything that in any way relates to a guiding document, right? So this would include declarations, constitutions, in some ways, policies, our missions, our identity documents, like all these guiding documents, everything put together basically becomes our methodology, but the methodology itself is an experience. It's not the actual document.
Yeah. Exactly. Before I was talking about the model. So the boundaries of the model are set by the policies. That's why you're saying everybody can change the policies and create their own model, but the methodology, it stays the same, right?
Well, the methodology is an ever-changing, evolving, living construct. So the methodology by definition never stays the same, right? But that's the whole point of it. For example, we as beings are an evolutionary result of thousands of generations of our parents and our parents' parents and our parents' parents' parents, that brought us to this point. And then we learn and educate through our society, which is the construct of knowledge and information that introduces us to who and what we are, at least in this third dimensional reality, right? That we co-create together. So leaving out all the bigger, broader consciousness components, we are a result of all of the past that has brought and come to this point. So the same is true with the methodology. And our methodology, based on where I learned that like everything that I present here is simply an evolution of what I have learned myself, which is rooted in 1960s environmental movement, in environmental and civil rights movements. You know, you could say U.S., but they were global, right? It happened all over the world. So that is where I learned the foundational methodologies of how I function and what I do, and the teams and the people that I have worked with, and seen how it functions and how it works. Right? It'll take a while to bring that into crypto systems, but there's on the most core basic form of what we're talking about, which is consensus-based, bottom-up organizing, right?
Uh-huh.
That model is nothing new. It's been around for generations and generations, and even before that, you basically have group decision making, right? So group decision making, problem solving, these have been around for hundreds of years. Problem solving, right? Consensus bottom up organizing is a little bit newer, but you're still talking about before I was even born, right? So I learned the skills that I know from people who were active in the 60s and obviously into the 70s. And then, it's a matter of evolving those systems. But when we pass them on to any future generation, these models and systems are still the same root configurations. They're just evolved and continue to grow for the time that they're in. So they will never stop evolving and growing and changing. But the methodology itself is an experience. Does that make sense? So when you experience, like, for example, the idea of coming to consensus, you cannot read in a book what consensus is. It is impossible to read a document and understand consensus. You can only understand consensus by experiencing a group of 5 to 10 people working out a problem until every single person is basically at least willing consensus, but even another level of experience would be supportive consensus, right? You don't understand what supportive consensus is until you've actually experienced it. Does that make sense?
Yes. Right. So,
and we've only experienced it like once or twice in the last like 5 years. Like supportive consensus is really hard to achieve. It takes a lot of effort, but even consensus is difficult, but it's still an experience. Like you can't read about consensus and understand it, because consensus is not everybody voting yes. That's not what consensus is, right? That's part of it, but it's more than that.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, exactly. Consensus is voting, agreeing without being pushed or manipulated, or I mean, you're agreeing because you believe in that. That's consensus. Yeah, we want to try to make sure that everybody understands. There's no concern, there's no objection. So that's what's consensus. I mean, there's layers to reach consensus.
What is the essence of consensus? The essence of consensus has nothing to do with voting. The essence of consensus has everything to do with open, collaborative dialogue. Right? So until you understand what dialogue is, what facilitation is, what it means to be a facilitator, what it means to actually create an open space where people are treated as human beings, what it means to make sure that you have a balance of feminine and masculine energy, all of that comes before you can actually achieve consensus in any meaningful way.
Cool. Very cool.
Yeah. Right. And so that's where you get, and I mean, like, I've gone to many trainings on facilitation and consensus building and all of that, I don't know, at least 4 or 5, as far as like official trainings. And obviously I've done like a bunch of, dozens of unofficial trainings, but like it has to be something that you can learn quickly and that you can learn through experience. It can't be something that everybody needs to be trained for, because it's decision making and generally just being present, and mindful is something that everybody has in them and innate in them, So, I mean, I don't think it's in any way something that people need to go to school for. Obviously, you need to be trained on it. You need to understand the concepts, but you don't need to go and get a degree or something. You know?
Yeah, I'm starting to get you. So
Yeah, one of the most important evolutions of our models and methodology is multocracy. So the foundation of our decision-making methodology is the triple democratic. Oh my God, I'm forgetting the name. Anyways, the triple democratic whatever, right? Which consists of the three pillars of democracy, which is
I have it.
representative democracy,
Direct, participatory, representative,
and direct democracy.
Direct,
right?
participatory, and representative, right?
Representative, participatory, and direct democracy. Yes. Yeah. And so that's sort of the foundation to our decision-making model, right? And then if you look at the duocracy, the dual democratic model, it would be the main ones we use is participatory, and direct democracy. So we use participatory and direct democracy the most as like our dual model, and then representative democracy would be the next level. For example, as soon as we get old world and new world, we need consensus between old world and new world to make decisions, right? That would be representative democracy. But the multocracy is the evolution. Multocracy is going way, way beyond that. And I won't even get started with it, but there's so many different components to multocracy, including demographic representation, which is super essential. And then you have a generational representation. And then, of course, one of the most important of all is ideocracy, which is the representation of ideas and thoughts, right? That actual thoughts, ideas, patents, all those have representation, that ideas in and of themselves have rights beyond the person who's voting. So that is just huge, right? So the biggest problem with our global values and ideals of a democratic world is simply that democracy has stalled. It's stalled in like even early 1900s. Our government institutional systems stalled and they stopped growing and evolving. I don't know, maybe everyone thought democracy was perfect for some reason. And it basically hasn't really improved since then, right? I mean, yes, there's been improvements in like parliamentary systems and other things that have improved somewhat, but it's in the Nordic countries are taking that to the extreme. But as far as like really evolving our democratic institutions and models, they are failing us, not because democracy is bad, but because they're not evolving for the current time. And that's what the multocracy is all about, is evolving democracy. Because if you involve democracy to be functional in the current time, I believe that it is by far the best decision-making model. And really, I could care less about democracy. So if we go even deeper, it's all about like we talk about economic, education, and decision-making. So the science of decision-making. And more importantly than the science of decision-making, the uniscience of decision-making, because we're all about unity in consciousness. And so the uniscience is the individual conscious journey and experience of decision-making, right? Where the science of decision-making would be the external perspective of how decision-making works from an external perspective, whereas the uniscience decision-making is about the internal conscious experience of decision-making.
Unicy of decision-making.
I spelt it wrong, but uniscience is from unity theory.
Yeah, Jay, I told you the other day, because I mean, the document is amazing, and I wanted to read it again, right?
Which document?
The unity theory.
Oh, yeah, unity theory. So unity theory is part of our methodologies, right? Because unity theory is kind of like a core building block to everything that has to do with majority voting. like the whole idea of democracy on every level is, instead of one person or an oligarch, right, overseeing all decisions, we're saying you need a minimum of 50%. We're saying we should be more than 50%. We should be striving towards super majorities, if not even consensus, right? But
Yeah, so
in the context of the basic principle of 50% plus 1, you have to have unity of all of the movements, because every single community grassroots bottom-up movement, none of them have any more representation than 5 to 10% maximum, right? Maybe you could say, I mean, you couldn't even say that, right? But and so you have to unify the movements, and that's what the foundation of unity theory is unification of the movements to reach the 50% majority required to have a unity government, which has power and ability to have balance and harmony with the planet. So in that context, you're looking at examples of maybe 5 or 6 times in history where unity governments have basically transformed national government systems. So that's the foundation of social unity. And then, of course, there's more than just social unity. The same principles of the social unification is exactly the same as conscious unification and understanding conscious unity, which it goes into universal and dimensional and fractal systems of consciousness, right? There's nothing different about it. It's the same exact thing. It's just one is applied to society and the other is applied to individual consciousness.
Okay.
So
yeah, I don't want to go into tangents.
Okay, so let's just finish this up. So the bottom line, where does it all fit in? My proposal is that methodology has to be its own separate thing. So what that means is that we would be creating, so we create, so this would be details, right? We would create the, basically the methodology P team, right? So this
it's
would be
a separate thing from the model.
No, like
it's just from anything else.
But right now we have the eval team, right? So the eval team, the eval team is focused on us, right?
Yeah.
So it's very similar to the eval team, except it doesn't focus on us. It's not about our conflicts. It's not about our contention. It's not about our issues. It's about the methodology. It's about how do we apply, like another way, you're going to hear this a lot from me moving forward, but how value is just such a core foundation, right? Everything has value, right? And the foundation of value is that we never own it, and it always comes from somewhere, but somewhere, right? Value cannot just come out of nothing. It always comes from somewhere, and so therefore we are stewards and in kinship with value. In other words, the value of the methodologies have been given to us from our ancestors. These are foundational knowledge that has been given to us over the course of decades, centuries, and really millennium, right? And a lot of it comes from ancient philosophies related to, native cultures, right? A lot of what we talk about is very, very rooted in native cultures, right?
Yeah.
Especially with our relationship with the earth and all of that. And so when you think of the real value is something that we personally do not own and control. It's only something that we are temporarily holding to pass on to the next generation. All of our value, whether it's money, resources, knowledge, information, all of it, it's not ours. It's simply we are here as stewards and as guides, and we're just passing that value on to whoever comes next. Right? So that's the foundational concept of the methodology. The only place where instead of focusing on ourselves, we're trying to take ourselves out of the picture and just think of ourselves as stewards and how we are simply passing this knowledge on to the next generation.
So so that's what you say. That's the methodology.
That's what the methodology P team is doing. So it's just like the eval team. We want to evaluate all of our methodologies, except the purpose of evaluating the methodology is not for us. It's about evaluating them and to pass on that value to future generations.
Okay, so wait. So first of all, we are stewards, and in what you write here, in kinship with value. I think I either don't know the word or
So do
950.
you understand the idea of stewardship?
Yeah, this I understood.
So
Yeah.
stewardship implies that you are above a resource and you are in stewardship of that resource, right? Does that make sense? Like, for example, you can steward a river ecosystem. You can be the steward of a river ecosystem. And you can talk about stewardship over that ecosystem. Does that make sense?
So I understood what steward means. Now, if you tell me about the river, being the steward of a river, not really.
Stewardship. Do you understand the idea of a stewardship with environment? Environmental stewardship is like kind of the foundation to old environmentalism, right? So you're
Taking care of something. Yeah.
taking care of something, exactly. But the vocabulary and the way that the stewardship is used is that we are taking care of our resource, so that we are basically are above that we're taking care of. That makes sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
The term kinship is a much more subtle term. And kinship means we are part of and interconnected with that which we are talking about, right? So we're in kinship with the environment, means that we are not a steward of the environment. We are partners with the environment and equals. So kinship is a much more delicate term. That is the new age understanding of environmentalism and sustainability, where we are not stewards of, we are in kinship with the environment. The environment and the planet itself is its own thing, and it has rights with us and even beyond ourselves. And so therefore we are in kinship with, not in stewards of.
But we are talking here about something even bigger, right? About value. We are in kinship with the value, the real value.
Yeah, well, just saying that, like, on the most fundamental concept, methodology is simply value. It's a type of value, right? So methodology is simply a value of knowledge for, in this case, social activism and organizing methodologies and social constructs for new models of decision making at every level, including the highest levels of global, regional, and local governance structures. And what we go for is local, right? Local decision making structures.
Right. So I have a question, because when you say foundational values that we never own it, that's okay. I understand, and it always comes from somewhere. So, so as I understand value is, of course, it comes from somewhere, but it's like the combination of different how can you say, different inputs, that this input together, they don't give a linear sum. Let's say we give a number to this input. One input is one, the other is one. There's three inputs, but we create something that has the output value is 4.
Yeah, but the key is creation, right? Because it's creation is the most valuable of all, and that creation comes from consciousness. So the most valuable resource of that possibly can exist in the context of consciousness is fourth and fifth dimensional, dimension, fourth and fifth dimensions, right? I mean, the amount of resources in a fourth dimension is infinite compared to third dimension. So when you talk about ideas and you talk about taking physical resources and combining them into more valuable substances, you're bringing the value of the fourth dimension. You're bringing the value of your own consciousness and your own ability to make something more out of what is in the third dimension. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes perfect
like all the
sense.
value has to come from somewhere. Like the value, all the value has to come from somewhere. It isn't just created out of nothing, right?
Yeah.
The combining of things in and of itself is a valuable construct, right? Like everything has value, including information technology, the ability of knowing how to combine it, the ability of evolving how you're combining it. All of that is valuable.
Yeah, I understand, but you're very specific in you wouldn't you wouldn't change the word comes from with the word is generated from somewhere, correct?
Yeah, that's
You
fine.
don't
I
mean
don't-
you don't mean it, you don't say that it's generated. You need that it's coming from somewhere that it already existed, and the combination made it possible for it to come, but it was already there, or it's
Exactly. Yes.
yeah.
Yeah. That
So
everything's
it was
already
not
there.
generated. Yeah,
In essence, in a fourth and fifth dimensional consciousness, everything's already there, right?
Yeah.
It's just we're just changing how and where it comes in, or we're bringing energy from other dimensions into the physical dimension. We're bringing knowledge from other places into the physical dimension to create more value. But again, that's still very limited in the idea of monetary value, right? Whereas when we talk about real value like is infinitely exponentially larger than just the minute monetary value.
You know, I'm not thinking about monetary value at all, but I'm thinking about the general concept, because I mean, for me, this is very specific, because I believe it too, like you're saying, right? So the value is not generated, right? It's not that you generate something, even though it seems so in the third dimension, but in reality, you're just making it possible for that value that already existed to enter, or to be manifested into this third dimension, right? The third dimension.
Yeah. I mean, it's exactly the same thing as E equals mc squared. It's just simply that it's value, right, instead of energy, right? So when you're talking about value, the idea is that all value exists, right? It's just a matter of transforming it.
Yeah.
Right? So you can only transform value. You can't create it out of nothing. Right? And so when you create value out of nothing, for example, let's say we have a token and we just create a whole bunch more tokens, that makes all the existing tokens less valuable. The entire value evens out. Nothing was created. You can create as many tokens as you want. You can create as many US dollars as you want. It doesn't create more value. The value is still always the same, right?
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes
So
sense. And I was writing, and it's interesting you put this formula here. Very interesting.
Yeah, well, we have lots of formulas when it comes to uniscience and all of the unity theory and all of that. Many a formula. All right, so when we go into the proposal here, it's simply just saying that we need to create a new methodology P team, and we should schedule it. I would say we just schedule it, quarterly or half year, something like that. So that the eval team happens once a month, and then every 3 months or every 6 months, instead of the eval team, we do a methodology team.
Right. Can you repeat that? So yeah, I agree with you. We need to create its own P team. So perfect. So I am definitely on the same page. And what were you saying about the quarterly or half year?
That just like the eval team, it would meet and we would do a whole methodology evaluation, every 3 to 6 months or something like that.
Yeah.
So every quarter, every half year.
Yeah, I mean, I think every quarter, it's better.
Yeah, let's say every 3 to 4 months. So I would say either every quarter, every 4 months. That sounds perfect. Okay.
Yeah. So at the end, basically at the end of the third month.
Yeah. So that's what we call a management proposal. So it's not like a big deal or anything, but as long as we have consensus, there's no objections, then that's fine. Right?
No objections.
It's not like this is not a policy or anything. It's just like a management proposal.
Yeah,
that we want
but
to have
we want
a place for methodology.
Yeah,
it doesn't really fit anywhere else. I just can't think of anywhere where it fits in. It really needs to be its own thing.
Yeah, I perfectly agree with you. Yeah. But I mean, we're going to have the evaluation of the methodology, but I mean, we should schedule before to do the P team, set up the P team and everything, or you want to do it then?
Well, there's nothing we really need to do for the P team. I already just made a Discord, group under executives. So let's bring into that. So I made a channel on Discord. I mean, eventually we'll have a news sheet, like we have. Don't we have an eval sheet?
Yeah, we do.
Yeah. So we just want to create a news sheet. We want to link these notes, and then we're going to want to link all of the methodology information from across the organization into, which is pretty simple. I mean, basically, we just need to link the methodology doc, right? And then from there, we'll have to start combining it all together and rooting it all. It'll be a long-term process, but it's still exciting and good, right? So, anyways, I think we're good on topic 1.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we reached the desired outcome perfectly.
All right. So
and we're perfectly bottom of the hour, so 2 minutes. So
yeah, so 5-minute break, and we'll go on to topic 2.
Yeah, 5-minute break.